Hey there, Arzang. So, you've written a set of essays for us. I'm very happy to see them. Let's take a look at this right away. First one is about food, local food, which is better. Let's see. Experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated whether food trade should be stopped or should continue to be transferred from far destinations. I completely agree that food should be produced locally. All right, I don't know what's going on with this color coding, and I don't really know why you have this in parentheses. A lot of this is a little confusing to me. So that's the first thing. Secondly, food is produced locally. So I don't think that's the question, whether food should be produced locally or not. The question is whether we should only eat locally produced food. Okay, so what you're saying and what you're supporting is different than what the essay is asking you. Should we only eat local food? So, in other words, if you're from Italy, should you only eat produce from Italy rather than perhaps Portugal or Spain or Greece? Okay, so the question is not whether the Italians should produce food. All right, I hope you understand the difference. Let's see. This essay will argue both sides using examples from the UK government and Cambridge University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. All right, now this is also a little strange. You've said that you completely agree, and so it's not entirely clear why you will argue both sides. All right, since you've told us that you completely agree. While I agree that you should cover both sides, it doesn't make sense when you say that you completely agree with one side. So how do I recommend dealing with this? Just don't say that you completely agree. If you see some merit to the opposite side, then you should mention that. So here a thesis statement would be useful, like while there are various benefits to eating food that has not been produced locally, on the whole, I believe that food should be produced locally. We should eat locally produced food. This essay will examine both sides using examples, etc., etc. All right, this is how I would approach this. So moving on. There is ample evidence that although food transfer has various benefits, if what was produced, the transfer, careful what you're saying. If you mean food, then make sure it's clear you mean food. If food was produced in local settings, it would have numerous advantages. The central reason behind this is twofold. Firstly, rather than frozen agricultural goods, fresher food is provided for all consumers. All right, why is that an advantage? Secondly, from an economic point of view, it could result in more prosperity in rural areas, and therefore this trend would financially benefit most local people. For example, recent empirical research by the UK government demonstrates that 90% of all villagers raising cattle villagers raise cattle so as to sell their products. What? All right, there's a problem with the grammar here. Recent empirical research by the UK government demonstrates that 90% of all villagers raising cattle in order to sell their products have become, it's a little messy as a sentence. Raising cattle. Trying to clean this up. This so as to sell their products is kind of messy. So villagers raising cattle for the meat products, you could have said, have become wealthier over the last 5 years. Therefore, it's conclusively clear that domestic products have more benefits. Your thing here, your example here, doesn't really support what you're saying, though, because you never told us that the villagers are only selling locally. Perhaps these villagers are selling internationally as well. So you have to be careful that the support you provide actually supports what you're arguing, okay? So I want you to be a little more careful with this. Okay, moving on. Moreover, although there is a case for large trade companies, food corporation chains, and even international truck drivers enriching society, the impact of farmers, local drivers, and Asian diligent workers cannot be overstated. I don't understand this sentence. How does this tie in at all? I'm not really sure. It's certainly not clear to me, at least. Other reasons why locally produced food should be taken into account are that it could contribute to more production, creating job opportunities, and eventually growth in the employment rate. For instance, an extensive study by Cambridge University showed that in such countries taking care of their own food production, owing to the sweeping change. All right. Let's try that again. For instance, an extensive study by Cambridge University showed that in countries that take care of their own food production, the unemployment rate has witnessed a steady decline by 6% in the last decade. In the last decade. That's how you fix this sentence. All right. So sometimes simpler is better. It provides more clarity. It makes sure that your message comes across. And that's the whole point, that your message comes through loud and clear and is not swamped down with extra language. That doesn't really help you in the end. Consequently, it is possible to state beyond doubt that if each individual consumed products produced by local people, it could economically and environmentally affect people's lives. Okay, I absolutely did not understand your first paragraph, your first sentence here. Forgive me. It didn't make sense. I don't know why it was there. It confused me. And now, before I give you my more holistic kind of advice, let's look at your conclusion. To conclude from the examples and arguments given, I firmly believe that advantages of consuming regional food provided by local people do outweigh the drawbacks. All right, fine. So now let's look at what you actually said and how you actually developed these paragraphs. Okay, now, according to your introduction, you said that you completely agreed that food should be produced locally, which we already discussed, and that this is problematic because no one is arguing whether this is good or not. Then you said that you will argue both sides. But you didn't. You didn't argue both sides. And that's why all of this blue and these parentheses and everything confused me. Basically, both paragraphs supported the idea of consuming only locally produced food. So I was really confused. Was I supposed to ignore this paragraph? I'm really not sure. This sentence, I keep saying paragraph. I don't know if I was supposed to ignore it, but it was very confusing to me. And then this was also confusing. Here you said there was a case for large trade companies, etc., 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 etc. You never actually developed that anywhere. So I was really kind of baffled by this. I mean, this kind of statement would make sense if you had developed this aspect in your previous paragraph, but you didn't. So I didn't really feel like it fit here. Okay? Let's see. So there was a lot of confusion in this essay, at least as far as I'm concerned. I thought it was confusing in numerous places. So what you're basically looking at is problems with your task achievement and your coherence and cohesion. So those are the two areas that for me that are problematic. Okay, so we spent a lot of time with your task 2. So let's go into your task 1. Now look what you did. You wrote an academic task 1 and a general task 1. I don't understand why. You have to know that you're either going to take general or academic. So from what I understand, you have taken the general in the past. So I'm going to assume that you're going to take general again and therefore correct the letter. Okay, this is the Albion one. So let's see what you said about this. Dear Dr. Cameron, my name is Arzang Smith, holding student card number this and case number this. I'm writing this letter to express my situation with regard to an unpredictable situation. It's not an unpredictable situation. The weather is unpredictable. The situation that happened to you was unexpected. Okay, so you need a different word here. An unexpected situation that happened to me. With regard to an unexpected situation that happened to me on my exam day, which I could not turn up to. You could not turn up to the exam day. To begin with, I would like you to accept my apologies for not informing the related department of the university before the exam. In fact, on March 22nd, the day before the exam, which was a snowy day, I twisted my ankle while I was leaving the hall of the residence hall, not hall of residence, residence hall. Then immediately I was taken to Lindell Hospital, and a few hours later my ankle was in plaster. My ankle was in a cast, perhaps it's more appropriate. I have already not maintained, that's inaccurate. I have already acquired, I have already collected all the hospital documents and bills. If I am asked for any proof, I will hand them in. I will hand them in as soon as possible. In addition to this, Professor Brown, head of the engineering department, was at the hospital on the day mentioned as a witness. Thank you for your consideration. Yours sincerely. Okay. So let's talk about what you did here. In terms of the bullets, there are several bullets you have to cover here. Let's see if you actually did this. Did you apologize? Yes, you did. Did you identify yourself? Yes, you did. Did you give an explanation? Yes, you did. Did you give resolutions? No, not even one. And so what this is going to do is this is going to severely affect your task achievement score. What I recommend you doing is looking up the band descriptors for general task 1. If you look under task achievement, you will see what happens to your score if you don't include some of the bullets, and you didn't even mention it remotely, so that's going to cost you. Okay, otherwise there was some awkwardness in the expression, so that would probably affect grammar. Coherence, cohesion were okay, they were fine, and vocabulary was, again, fine. All right, so that's basically it, I think. I think we covered everything. All right, so what you need to do now is correct these essays, return them back corrected, add to your error correction list, and then also, of course, a new set of essays. I'm here. I'm waiting to see what you write next, so good luck with your next assignment.